what if I could be part of something that changes lives from millions or even billions? NSF rewards good science and good data with the promise of changing the future.
If you can get NSF funding, then you're doing something real.
We got funded by America's Seed Fund, powered by NSF.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Licia Crumpton-Young, and as you saw from that powerful video, I am pleased to serve as the head of the Small Business section within the Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships Directorate at the National Science Foundation. Clearly, as shown in that video, we are making a difference in our nation and globally by supporting outstanding small businesses. So thank you for joining us for today's dynamic discussion. This discussion is going to begin for us the celebration of America's Seed Fund Week, where in today's discussion, you'll have an opportunity to hear from two successful CEOs about their journey. You'll get a chance to hear their secrets to success. Many of you may know, and it may be new to others, that America's Seed Fund Week is an annual event that's used to connect entrepreneurs, innovators, researchers, and support organizations from across the country. It is the largest gathering, the largest source of information for early stage and research development funding that we provide through America's Seed Fund. The NSF, SBIR, and STTR programs, also known as America's Seed Fund, is a flagship program that NSF established back in the 1970s. So NSF was a leader among helping to establish the other programs known as America's Seed Fund that are now offered by many of the government agencies. We're excited that as we begin this year, we anticipate that we'll have a budget of more than $250 million to continue to support small businesses. I'm sure many of you have been curious about when our new program solicitation will be posted. I want to let you know that in the upcoming weeks, our new solicitation will be posted on our NSF America's Seed Fund website. So please continue to check the website for updated information about the new solicitation, as well as the plan to reopen our project pitch portal. Our program, NSF's SBIR, STTR program, for those of you that may not be aware, provides more than $2 million of funding support for deep technology, small businesses that are interested in engaging in research and development. We also help to support feasibility assessments and other types of work pertinent to transforming scientific and engineering discoveries into products and services with both commercial and societal impact. As I mentioned earlier, today's dynamic discussion features two NSF-funded small businesses who have had successful translation journeys from early stage ideas to creating real-world impact. You'll have an opportunity to hear from two CEOs. The discussion will be moderated by Rajesh Mehta and Alistair Monk, who both serve as program directors within the small business section at NSF. Rajesh Mehta joined NSF as an SBIR and STTR program director in 2012. Prior to joining NSF, he was a senior research technologist at Kodak, where his 26-year career spanned work at Kodak Research Laboratories and at the Manufacturing Research and Engineering Organization. Assisting Rajesh in hosting is Alistair Monk. Alistair joined NSF as an SBIR, STTR program director in 2019. Prior to joining NSF, Alistair was an active member of the startup ecosystem in Virginia, serving as a mentor, judge, and entrepreneur. He's been directly involved in medical startups and served as vice president of medical products at Cupron Incorporated. We are excited to have both Rajesh and Alistair today to serve as our facilitators of this dynamic discussion. Please join me in welcoming them, and they will introduce our dynamic CEOs that will participate in the discussion. Thank you. Alistair and Rajesh.
Okay. Thank you, Licia. Let me give this opportunity for the CEOs to introduce themselves. Brual, if you like to go first.
Sure. Thank you, Lisha. Thanks, Rajesh. Nice to meet you, everyone. And thank you for everyone joining online as well. We're excited to share like my and Grey Matter Robotics journey through this call. A brief background about me: Brual Shah, currently co-founder and CTO for Grey Matter Robotics. Background: did my PhD in robotics from University of Maryland, College Park, out on the East Coast. Moved to USC out on the West Coast in LA, where I was a research scientist and a postdoc. That's where we started working on these technologies, like fundamental technologies behind Grey Matter Robotics today. Um, I currently lead a team of around more than 50 engineers and researchers working on wide variety of tasks and operations, which goes beyond our physical AI stack. Uh, Overall, we are a team of around 104, 105 people in the course of last 7 years of Grey Matter's journey. From what Grey Matter does, I can probably share in 30 seconds. So Grey Matter Robotics is a physical AI company deploying robots in a lot of industries and like manufacturing use cases, such as sanding, polishing, painting, coating, grinding. These are all dull and dirty jobs across wide variety of use cases, including like fire truck makers. This is an image of a robot sanding underside of a wing, like a 737 aircraft. I cannot show the images of aircraft at the moment, but we do sand all the way from 737 aircrafts to football helmets, which we use in like NFL football helmets of that scale. We deploy systems for fire trucks, ambulances, um, a lot of other like defense and maritime industries and so on and so forth. We actually developed what we call like a factory super intelligence, which is a physics aware AI powered solution stack which autonomously move the systems to perform the operation which it needs to do. The reason why this is crucial is over the course of last few years, US has a large amount of backlog in terms of making equipments. An example would be if as a city, if you want to buy a fire truck today, the lead time of any fire trucks is 4 years. So cities will have to wait 3 to 4 years to even get a fire truck because of a large amount of shortage backlogs which they have. Same thing applies for a lot of defense artifacts, including aircrafts as well as uh, aircraft carriers and submarines and so on and so forth. We are heavily empowering a lot of US small businesses to adopt automation and bring back like manufacturing back to US and helping them in their journey in adopting this high-powered AI-powered robots essentially to deploy them in the manufacturing floor.
Thanks, bro. I appreciate that. Reza, may we ask you to introduce yourself and your company too? Tell us a little bit about PediaMetrix.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Such a pleasure to be part of this amazing discussion. So my name is Dr. Reza Saifabadi. I am co-founder and CEO of PediaMetrix. I did my PhD dissertation at Johns Hopkins, spent a few years at NIH, and also did a fellowship at Children's National Hospital, where I was trained as an entrepreneur in pediatric healthcare. What PediaMetrix, as the name suggests, so our mission is to bring early screening to pediatric care for a variety of conditions. We use AI, smartphones, and computer vision. So that's the core, expertise. And we started the company based on experience as parents. So the beachhead product that we have is called SoftSpot. It is the first and only FDA cleared software as a medical device, allowing not only pediatricians but also parents to measure early sign of baby head-shaped deformities. This is a very common condition that hasn't been a tool for, at the point of care. So we basically turn smartphones into accurate HIPAA-compliant fecal measurement tool, which otherwise only was available in specialist offices. So that's our first product. It's already in hundreds of clinics across the U.S. in 34 states and 5 other countries. It's also available on Amazon. We just launched it on Amazon as a direct-to-consumer product. And I think what I would love to highlight is we are here because of the early support from National Science Foundation. I deeply believe in NSF mission in helping small companies, including us, especially in pediatrics, because historically pediatrics receive less interest from like the early investors because the market size is relatively small to come to others. So without NSF we wouldn't be here. And we are continuing to do innovations. We have released, launched multiple products. For example, like ear spot, which is basically to use AI to spot early sign of ear deformities. Scolio spot, which is helping pediatricians to find early sign of scoliosis, and the innovation just continues. It's a pleasure to be here, and I would love to what it comes next.
Okay, thank you, Reza.
My pleasure.
So, Alistair and I are going to go back and forth in terms of asking a few questions. So, Brul, obviously, you were fortunate enough to get early support from NSF, but this is a long journey, and you probably needed a lot of other supports to be where you are right now. Can you talk a little bit about what additional resources you needed to be successful?
No, for sure. So, I mean, I'll probably give a lot of people like insights of like how the early days of any startups, probably including ours, of how it works out. So we started the company, I think, January 2020, right before COVID. In those early days, when you are taking any technology, so I would try to distinguish between technology and a product. That is a very crucial distinction, which any founder will have to do when you're wearing a research hat. You are building a lot of technologies in the universities, in the lab, across wide variety of NSF grants you get. You are building great technologies, which is helps you solve something as a problem. So when you are an early researcher or a technologist trying to bring the technology to the market, there are very limited believers which you have in some sense, right? In the space. And NSF, who has backed the technology up, is your first believer in general in terms of okay, what you can do with this technology and how you can couch it into a product. So through the journey, you require few different aspects of people who believe in the mission, and believes in the technology, believes in the people, and to grow the business, right? So in the early days, when you start a company, it's pretty much you and your co-founders, and maybe your early employees if you have managed to hire, depending upon the funding which you get. These are the early members and your NSF program members, the customers who you have engaged with, early advisors you would have engaged with, are the people who would be helping you in terms of trying to bootstrap this from ground up, right? And those are the support which you require, because in early days, pretty much every day will be a failure, right? In some sense, in some way, shape, and form. If it's not a financial failure, it will be converting the technology to product. The customer will be mad. The technology is not going the right way. When we started, at least in 3 months, we had COVID on our heads, and we had to plow through COVID in terms of kind of keeping the team, including social distancing and so on and so forth, to actually mature, right? And once you actually take that off and then you start getting traction, right? That is where your scale up process begins, right? The traction could happen in the format of early customers, traction could happen in letter of interest, traction could happen in a successful product demonstration in a wide variety of use cases, which you thought, okay, how you would, and so on and so forth. And with the traction, you can then build upon a lot of venture funding, a lot of government funding in terms of like different aspects of programs which you can bid on, and so on and so forth. And that kind of helps you grow the company. And over the course of last 6.5, 7 years now, we have raised more than $80 million in capital, but everything just started with that initial seed funding from NSF, right? Who actually grew it up. So we did a seed round, like a pre-seed round, seed round of $4 million, a Series A round of $20 million, a Series B round of $45 million to grow the company. And now this year we'll be raising a Series C round to even expand the company further and also go international.
Okay, thank you.
So Reza, saw lots of nodding, so probably along the same line. So in that distinguishing between sort of a technology and a product, what was some of the biggest sort of learnings that you had when people actually started using your product? What was sort of some of the biggest issues that you then faced to get more people to adopt and start taking forward your product?
Exactly. So I think when you start, all you have is some hypothesis, right? So I think the first thing we did when we launched our, so we, as a parent, we experienced the problem, so we know this is something real, but we didn't stop there. So we benefited heavily from the National I-Core program. So the NSF I-Core program, which is, I certainly recommend for early entrepreneurs. So we participated in the mini I-Core and then the National I-Core. We traveled to 6 states. We talked to pediatricians, to like a lot of healthcare professionals, some of our competitors, and that kind of shape our hypothesis early on. So I think that's when you are at the earliest stage of making sure that you are in the right path. And what we did is to start very with like an MVP. I remember when we our first customers, the first users. I wouldn't say customer because we cannot officially sell before FDA clearance. So I think so we reach out to friends, whoever have a small babies, to do the initial testing. And I do remember that our initial prototype was just a website allowing users to go and upload pictures, and then we manually process those in a Word document, and then created a report, and then provided to them. And I think the feedback receiving showed us that we are in the right path. And then once we secure the funding, we start creating the more professional products. And over the years, it's just keep getting better based on the real world customers. So early on, I believe making sure that your hypotheses are accurate. So I-Core is the amazing platform to help that. And then I think later on, when we went through the FDA clearance process, is a very uh, thorough and lengthy process. So you have to basically prove that your device is as accurate and as safe as the predicate device that is used in clinics. So thanks to I-Core, we found amazing partners, who help us to find the clinical sites, do the clinical studies, which later on allow us to submit our 510(k) to the FDA and receive the FDA clearance. And once you have a product which is regulated, then I think now is the if the market is ready for your product and who are the early customers. So again, we have hypotheses which we learn along the way that probably we go to other segment of the market who are ready for our product, and later on focus on that. So I'm happy to talk about those as we discuss.
I appreciate that, and I did see some hands raised. I think we will take some questions at the end, but I think we're going to try to make the most of the time we have with our panelists to answer questions. So we're not going to answer any questions right now, but we will probably try to open it up later if we have an opportunity to. So Rajesh, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah. So, Brual, as you know,
I would like to touch upon that product versus technology from like a physical science, physical like manipulation robot software aspect as well. So one of the challenges which a lot of founders and researchers, including myself and Aryan, like early on, right? When you try to get your research out into a product format, right? You have a lot of attachment towards it, right? And as you are learning things from the market, a lot of early founders try to kind of disregard a lot of feedback coming from customers because you kind of disregard in the sense you know best what is for them, right? As a technology provider, as a founder, right? You are not actually open to feedback because you believed in your research, which you have done for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, from that lens. And that is a lot of times that is like a crucial mistake, right? When you are listening to the customers, when you are trying to understand, okay, how can I solve their problem? And whatever I have developed, it's a means to solve that problem. And at times that means may or may not be even used. So after like first 2 years, we had to kind of rethink even your after you get your early product market fit for like 1 or 2 customers, but that doesn't mean that another 1,000 will follow after that, right? Because there's a huge gap even in that early adopter mindset to an early majority which you go. And at times you have to like completely leave your research out, and you have to be like really critical about that to your own research, because you are your first own critique, and that is like really really required to grow a business, right? Because a lot of times people make this mistakes of getting attached to your technology so much that you are not able to kind of let go of it, and you are always in a way of getting into this research mindset of how to improve your technology further, not actually listening in terms of how you can get the product out in the hands. So that is a much crucial step, and that will require for you to fight with yourself and your early believers in some sense, which is a very it's a journey. It's not a 1 day thing. It's a journey.
Brual, you almost read my mind because you answered the question I was going to pose to you. So now that you have answered it, let me pose the question. What is the most difficult thing that you had to do in your journey? Because technical difficulties is something that we evaluated at the time we decided to fund you. But obviously, you encountered a lot more challenges. What was the most difficult thing, and how did you overcome it?
I think a lot. Thanks for asking the question, Rajesh. And like I've been fortunate enough, a lot of people asking me that question, and looking back, the answer evolves every maybe 3 months, I would say, as a founder, right? Because your difficult thing is changes like, as a function of time and as a company grows, right? The only thing which remains certain is there will always be a difficult thing next month. It doesn't end as your company evolves. So at least I would start with an early stages, right? Like the first couple of years, the most difficult thing you would probably go after is trying to find customers who believe in your product and willing to give you the shot, right? Because when you as an early entrepreneur, with depending upon what your background is, depending upon what your product background is, depending upon wide variety of use cases, right? For us, for customers to clear up a manufacturing floor space, to deploy a robot, to us to prove it out to them, saying that, oh, this will actually add value, right? Because we don't have any data, we don't have any reference customers, you don't have any like references to say, okay, this is actually going to work or not, right? And in that time, you have to consider those early customers almost like as partners. And by that I mean like they are in some sense, when you are that customer word is used in wide variety of contexts, but they are essentially helping you build the product. So even if you have to give a lot of free services, a lot of free feature sets, a lot of new hardware, a lot of new support, like a lot of different like peripheral um, requirements from them, they are actually allowing you to build that product. And once you get in that journey with that partner, when you come on the other side, that becomes your great reference customers. You take a learning saying that, okay, what it means to actually deploy the product, and you take it from there. That is your first 2 years. That is the most critical part, because Aryan and I, we traveled through NSF ICOR as well. We traveled, I think, probably 13, 14 states. I talked to like more than 200 customers. Even after that, we actually traveled a lot, even in SoCal, going a lot of manufacturers, knocking their doors, saying that we have this robot, showing them a lab demo of what our robot can do, getting out there, them giving us parts, proving it out to them, saying that it's going to add value, right? And it's not just a cool looking toy on your shop floor. That is convincing, that whole aspect. So which involves a means of sales, right? Which you don't actually are not, most engineers are not like great at sales in some sense, but you are trying to sell yourself, not only your product, right? In that early first 2 years, which probably is where you pivot into being an entrepreneur. So that first 2 years, at least for this audience, I would say would be the toughest thing in the first 1 to 2 years. As we go along in this conversation, if we have more time, then I can explain more harder things afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
No, I appreciate that. I'm probably going to continue, if you don't mind, Reza, on the kind of challenges theme and say, what were some of the most sort of challenging things about your SBIR, STTR award, the journey that you were on to get those awards, and then what did you learn by the end of it that you wish you'd known from the outset? That if you could share that as well, that'd be great.
Exactly. So I think Abral meant, said, perfectly. So it's time-based, definitely, the challenges you go through. I think for life science startups, I would say there are multiple challenges. The first one is the technology. So you are building something that nobody has ever done. So you have to de-risk the technology. So that's where the NSF comes in, and support you. The second one is the regulatory aspect. So you need to go through the FDA process, which is very unknown for first-time entrepreneurs. So you even don't know what category, what kind of product you end up, because nobody has built this before. So you have to basically do that. And number three is like the reimbursement. So once you have a product which is working and it is FDA cleared, so now is the doctors are ready to adopt it. So is there any code authorized by the American Medical Association to cover your innovation? So you have to basically innovate in all of these three aspects. And then number four is to find the early customers, like who are the customers that you go to, because again, there hasn't been a predicate device. Yes, people are solving this problem in other ways, but as I think this makes it challenging. So I think when you start, I think this is true story, is not just made up. So me and my co-founder, we thought in 8 months we are gonna make the app, sell it to 1 million parents, and that's it. So it took 4 years to develop the technology and receive FDA clearance, and you still don't have a single customer. So I think that's the kind of things that you don't know, or basically you know how difficult maybe FDA is, but reimbursement. So most medtech entrepreneurs don't know details about what's the process to get reimbursement. So there are a lot of things that you go through, and as you grow the company or the product, you learn along the way.
I appreciate it. If I could just quickly, Rajesh, if you don't mind. So
Sure.
what would be that one piece of advice if you could go back to Reza of the pre-application and say, here's something you should know and you should keep in mind throughout the process? What would that one sort of
I
tip or
think
trick be?
amazing. Yeah, I think just I think we don't get discouraged by early rejections. So I think we submitted multiple applications until not only to convince NSF, but also our to find the you know what exactly we are going after. Again, the ICOR program significantly helped us to I think I would definitely suggest for audience who can benefit from this program, to benefit from it, and don't get discouraged by early rejections, and just keep keep working on it, and you can once you have a solid pitch and a solid plan, then I think the rest will follow.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So, Brewer, just to continue the conversation, you said, okay, initially you had a handful of believers. Then you and your co-founder, talked to all these 200 different people and try to build up that audience. So, what were the biggest challenges in moving from early adopters to make it a mainstream product?
The two for us, it's a multitude of things. I'll try to keep it short. So the first thing is, for us, the product is never complete. So it's like a product is evolving, right? As you get more data, as you understand more use cases, understand. So there is a shift which was required, saying that, okay, like how do you work with customers? How do you um, uh, expand your use cases, expand your portfolio of what you call to be a product, right? At the end of the day. The second thing, which was a huge learning for us, is the robot actually doing the operation. Like, let's just consider a robot sanding an aircraft wing, right, in a hangar. And it's as simple as it gets. Like, that's your primary product, right, in some sense. But then the problem happens is the ecosystem around managing, servicing, maintaining, supporting this new piece of equipment is not present. Right. By that, I mean the customer who is adopting this solution does not have like required staff to manage and maintain this, because they've always done this operation by hand. So we actually expanded our offerings into what we call like a full stack solution. That by that I mean the robot comes with its own tooling had attachment which we need to manufacture, because 3M and bunch of different vendors who made those pads for people does not apply to robot. So we had to innovate in that space. So we also provide that to the robot. We provide like a 24/7 remote support. So we had to build a lot of peripheral product, which is like someone can call in. We have a lot of bells and whistles, which will allow us to send messages, text, what kind of errors happens, recovering the robot under 5 minutes, working with a lot of operators in Spanish, wide variety of languages in terms of keeping the system in production, as well as then providing like every quarter services and support in terms of fixing the hardware if something goes wrong, then building the right amount of supply chain in the company, carrying inventory of parts, right amount of testing procedures for a lot of those hardwares, and so on and so forth. So when you start a company, like we even right now, like the problem you're trying to solve is just one, like you need to sand an aircraft, right? That's the problem. But for you to actually do that, just providing a robot with an autonomous brains, which will move the robot, which will sand, is not enough. Like, you have to provide the whole peripheral worth of suite, and that insight is very crucial, and it only come with when you are like working with the customer, like you are really listening to them in terms of, okay, what is prohibiting from Jesus to use the robot in second shift? Like, I'm seeing the data only Mario is using in shift 1, why someone is not using in shift 2? And then you come to realize, oh, Jesus is not trained, he's feared of using the robot, and we have to like upskill that new worker and say, okay, how can I take the existing staff, right, and kind of upskill them to become robot operators, take their fear away. So we created literally a lot of like education material, right, and empowerment material, so that we empower a lot of the shop floor operators who are not savvy enough to use this sophisticated system, because they're just worried that they're going to damage the aircraft. So you have to now do education, you have to do a lot of other activities around what the solution is. And that becomes crucial as you are evolving in your journey, right? Because early on, what happens is when you're working with few customers, you as founders go on site and say, I'm going to do this, right? Like, like you are giving them a pure white glove service. Your engineers are always on staff helping them run the robot. But when you deploy hundreds of them, it's no longer the case. Now you need to find a lot of processes, even internal and external, through the value stream map to understand, okay, how can I make this one robot which just lands an aircraft successful for the customer, and how can I do that in a scalable fashion within the organization, that my best engineers are not going always on site kind of training them. I need to create a lot of peripheral um, products, sub-products, technology stack, solution stack, PHM, a lot of data monitoring services, a lot of peripheral products, which is required to kind of upkeep this particular platform.
Great. Thank you. That's very insightful.
It is. I appreciate that. I might jump on that segue, Reza, and say, obviously, you know, once you've got all the infrastructure and you started to deploy as you have, you know, you've obviously talked a little bit about experiencing the problem that you're trying to solve and connecting with other parents who are experiencing the problem that you are trying to solve. And so once you've obviously deployed and you've got a large number of pediatricians using it, and you've gone direct to the consumer, and you've got other parents now using it, how do you actually understand that whether you're actually having a real impact or not? Obviously, you've deployed a lot, you've got a lot of people using it, but how would you determine, you know, success, and how would you determine the impact that you're having?
Great question. I think, like you said, we have two kind of, customer segment, like selling to doctors and selling to parents are, the different, value propositions. I think, the most, yeah, I think one of the, easy way to track is your sales. You can track your sales, your churn, like, how many of your customers stay with with your product, and how many referrals you get, from doctors or, parents. So I think, I'm talking about the later stage, like not early on. So, if you have happy customers, talk about your customers, actually, most of our leads nowadays are from referrals, word of mouth, so I think that's, very encouraging to see, the customers are happy. You can also, we have customer support, you can see the kind of activities you have within that platform. Now that we are on Amazon, I think the easiest way is to look at the reviews, and the feedback from customers, what they say, not only to give us, momentum, but also to see where, we are, kind of falling behind and what area we can improve upon. So I think, customers, satisfaction, referrals, obviously your sales, and like reviews, I think these are the tools that we use to basically measure, our success.
So I hate to put you on the spot, but if you had to share some of those kind of individual impact stories, could you share some of those examples of kind of how
Yes.
you'd actually measure what we would think of as traditionally as broader impacts,
Yeah.
those as kind of societal impacts? What are some of those kind of
Yes, I
lessons and
think
learnings?
one of
Sorry, go.
one of absolutely one of the first thing we hear from parents is, "Oh, I wish I knew about this before when my first child, I wish my niece, my nephew, my grandson, granddaughter use this product because they have to go through intensive treatment options." So I think this is one of the first thing we hear, from the customers. Um, and that's basically, why we created SubSpot in the first place. So yeah, I think, knowing about our product and, not going through the difficulty of, helmet or surgery is, what really, keeps us, going.
I appreciate it. And just maybe, Rajesh, if I can just jump on with one more. I know
Sure.
we've got 2 seconds. Obviously, you started with the soft spot, and now you're sort of expanding across that pediatric consortium of other
Yes.
conditions that may not be well served or I guess underutilized. So could you just really quickly talk through that decision to sort of stay on the pediatric sort of conditions that are not being well served, as opposed to sort of scaling and going after the larger volume sort of indications that you could do with an AI sort of smartphone
Yes,
indication?
I think because we believe there is a lack, of, early screening tool in pediatrics. So again, because pediatrics, market is smaller, there is less innovation, and most of the, resources has been there. And, I think we also personally have passion, we believe there is a lot of, opportunities to innovate. Like I said, most of our product, or all of the products we have built are first in kind. So which means, there hasn't been, unfortunately, enough innovations in this space. And I think with the AI and access to smartphones, there's a unique opportunity for innovation in these spaces. And I think this is something that we keep us very excited. And I think if you look at it, there, from pediatrics perspective, there is not like a platform that solve that parents can go with their concern and get something which is not only accurate and science backed, but also reassuring. So I think there is a lack of innovation. There's we haven't seen, like, honestly, something that we have been envisioning from the early on. And that's I think AI is just helping us to realize that. So we have this mission from beginning, but AI has significantly accelerated the realization of these tools that we are creating.
Thank you.
So, Brewer, you mentioned that you had to have some educational programs for workers, etc. And there is a great deal of fear that robots are going to take the jobs away, where in fact your mission is actually help workers so they don't have to do stuff which are difficult to do and helps them. So can you talk about the impact that you have seen on the workers' attitude when they're introduced to your robots, and after they use it, how their mindset changes and how they feel about your product?
Yeah. I think we have learned a lot. Like, even workers from different cultural backgrounds have different, like, some people will be vocal about it, some people will not be vocal about it. They would have wide variety of things. But the one common impact, like, surprisingly, when I mean, in general, we have a lot of great engineers who interact with a lot of these people, and we get a lot of insights on how it changes their life. But the few repetitive theme of statements which people have made, despite we training them on what to say in whatever capacity, is they don't feel like their body is not tired at the end of the day. So they can go play with their kids and grandkids by doing the same amount of operations, right? So earlier they were using their body as a means to paint, sand, be in that area, wear the PPE, who are in that very hazardous environment, wearing masks all the time, and so on and so forth. Your harms. And if you take a sander, I would like, even I, it's very hard job, right? Like, your hands are like, it's a very hard job. And the repetitive theme is they can still actually add value to doing the same process which they were doing before. So their brains and their knowledge is still being captured and being utilized, in terms of an artisan is still telling the robot what needs to be done. But the physical aspect of actually doing the job is taken away. So a lot of the operators later on become champions. So we do a great amount of work in making that champions, because, like, me, Aryan, any decision maker, even the decision maker at the customer side, none of us, including our engineers, are going to be on the shop floor like 24/7 using the robot, right? At the end of the day, people who are using the robot are like your first champions in adoption, and all, not just that, but also providing feedback of what is working and what is not working, right? So we heavily encourage in terms of them, like, almost complaining about it, right? Like, you should be like maniacally complaining of what is not working for you, right? And we want to listen what's not working for you, because that's the only way we can solve that problem for you. And, like, in terms of, okay, how can I actually go about doing it? And that there is a cultural aspect. A lot of people from different cultural backgrounds, right? If they are Spanish speaking, they are not allowed to kind of be vocal about their thoughts. So we had to kind of really, really get to them with a lot of Spanish engineers we have, saying that, like, please complain, like, you should complain. Like, you are in this, like, please tell us, like, what is not working for you, right? And that's when they started actually sharing the right kind of insights. Before that, it was not possible because a lot of people would not actually share insights. They're like, yeah, it is okay, right? Like they don't want to come across to their higher ups that they are complaining about something which they don't know how it works. In that essence, also we do a great amount of job in identifying day-to-day tools. Like for example, we use masking tapes, markers, and chalk, which people are accustomed to writing on their parts to tell the robot what they should expect the robot to do on the part, not actually training them on a 3D CAD system on the screen, which is just too cumbersome to even understand, like what are XYZ axes, what is roll, pitch, and yaw, what is the perspective of view you are viewing the CAD. It's just very hard to be scalable from that sense. So we try to keep the solution as easy to use for the shop floor worker who is doing this job by hand, and making them as a champions into the solutions, which will allow us to, again, like for us, robots are, we have to deploy at a mass scale, right? For the US to become successful in terms of reshoring this manufacturing at the capacity which we need to reshore, we have to upskill the people who we have today. We cannot actually delineate them in this process for adoption of robots, because then it's going to be very, very hard.
I appreciate that. I think if you don't mind, I'm just going to ask one final question, then we may open up the Q&A to allow the audience to ask some questions of our panelists while we have them together. But not to put you both on the spot, but Reza and Baral, if you were in the audience today, knowing what you know now, what is it you would want to share with yourselves if you were the audience member, to sort of final words of encouragement to keep moving forward? What would you want to have heard, or what would you want to share with somebody if you were in the position of our audience listening rather than sitting where you are today? Reza, you can go first.
Sure. I think for many founders, I think the question is, when is the right time to start? I think I can imagine that most of our the participants have some ideas to innovate, and many of them are contemplating when is the right time, or when should I start. I think that's what I would, or how can I start? What should happen for me to start? And I think that's probably the question I have, and I hope at the end of this conversation we can encourage more of the audience to make the first step to start the journey. And I believe, like, if you agree with me, if I think that usually the first step is very difficult, and once you start something is hard to stop. At least this is how I operate. So I think that's, I think, the starting point is my question. So how I can start? What should happen for me to start? What can I do for to survive this is very uncertain journey, especially for immigrants, or I think that's hopefully what I can inspire. So that's probably the question I would ask.
I appreciate. Baral, anything you'd like to add to yourself if you're in the audience? What would you want to hear?
Make failure part of your day-to-day life, essentially, right? We are very accustomed to grading systems and getting A's, being academics, right? In some sense, that is not the real world, unfortunately. So there are a few things. One is be accustomed to failures. Make yourself comfortable in unknowns, because you would find unknowns of where things are going to go every single day, and you need to figure out, okay, how do you break the problem down, figure out the knowns and unknowns in the process. And finally, in that journey, you would build a sense of problem solving over the course. It could be, the problems will appear from whatsoever, like hiring problems, staffing problems, customer problems, financing problems, like you would name it, right? It will be even personal life will become challenging, right? Being an entrepreneur is a journey. And it's like make problems and unknowns as your almost your day-to-day way of how you want to go around doing it. The last thing I would add is like, was it all worth it, right? Because there's like, why am I going through this pain and effort? Like, how can I say it's all worth it, right? The first time you would see your research being used by a known person out in the world, and you would actually interact with them and they would thank you for your innovation or invention, whatever you do and build. And that is what is going to make it worth, right? And that is a very limited number of people out there who can actually see that journey all the way from the first hypothesis or the paper which you would have published, right, all the way to a finished product which is used by parents or by workers or by anyone in the world, which is a quite gratifying journey at the end.
Thank
Well,
you.
I think, yeah, thank you
Mhm.
so much. While we wait for the Q&As to come in, I think I will certainly extend my thanks to you both for a great dialogue. Rajesh, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
No, this has been a very insightful conversation. So thank you both very much.
Absolutely.
I think we are starting to get some Q&A sessions coming in. If you give us a second, just to start looking at some of the questions coming in. I think what kind of while we wait for those to come in, I might ask one more question just as we start compiling what's coming in, and just ask you both and say, what was one thing that surprised you the most about going on this journey that you didn't anticipate, but is something that you now know that you wouldn't have actually, thought that you would have learned? Go ahead, Reza. Yeah, please.
Yes, I think if I want to say one thing, I think but when this is personal, I don't say, many people think this way, but as an, scientist who turned entrepreneur, my initial idea was to innovate something that has never been done before. So I think this is, probably many, people in the audience are prone to. So I think that's amazing, but at the same time, you're taking a lot of risk, because you have to innovate not only scientifically, technologically, going through, all of those things. So I think, but as I mature as an entrepreneur, I think, you learn that, you should be innovative, but also make sure that, there's a huge market, that's I think you don't have to be the first necessarily. So definitely if you survive, you can lead that industry or whatever, niche or whatever it is, but you don't have to be. I think you can be innovative enough to differentiate from and I think that's probably one thing I have learned as when it comes to innovation. If I add one more thing as an entrepreneur, I think I think what makes or breaks an entrepreneur is just staying with the game. You just wake up every day, you forget about bad things happening yesterday, and just keep going, and I think good things would happen. I think these two things I would like to share with the audience.
I
Okay.
appreciate it.
So one question I think a lot of people are thinking, hey, you two founders, you got the award, you are successful. That's a great story. But I'm at the beginning. What do you think were the key things that actually made you eligible for receiving this award? When you think about your technology, what were the key things about your team or your company that was really important that you think got you the award from NSF? Brual, if you
Yeah,
want to go.
yeah. A few things for us. It was uh, definitely how our research applies to the use cases or the problems which you are trying to solve. So having some knowledge or indication of, okay, what will be the type of customers you're going to go after, what would be some understanding of how does your research can revolutionize that problem, some understanding of problem if it is not like 100%, like which is very hard to get, right? Definitely getting some letter of references from either not just from your like academia, but also like someone who will be that early supporter saying that, hey, whatever Bruval is working on is like great, would love to kind of be that early prototype trial person. You can find them on social media, you can find them on like in person, you can interview them. Some of those will be crucial. For us, team structure was also important because again, Having one founder, I think there were a few questions around them as well. It's great. Like, I don't think there is any harm in having a single founder. But from the NSF, given though I don't know about how they review proposals and stuff today, but at the end of the day, people are going to bet on people, right? When you are at that early stage. So betting on one person versus betting on two people, which have slightly different skill sets, is always like desirable. And that is one of the reasons not just most universities now have, I think, some way, shape, and form, like like a startup innovator incubation kind of forum where you can get your early founders. It doesn't have to be like you need to write your agreement and stuff like that. It could be just still two friends collaborating on an idea in that early stage, and so on and so forth. So having like multiple people always helps with like at least slightly different skill sets, so that depending upon what stage, it's not just getting the funding, but also then going to your first customer, going to the bank to get any kind of loan, going to lease to sign the first lease for your space, and so on and so forth. It always helps.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate it. Probably echoing the skill set point. I think some of the questions that have come in are, what were some of the skills that you had to learn that you ultimately at the beginning of launching your products and at the beginning of your journey that you think are key to your success, Reza? And then I think the final question, part of the question would be, what was your consideration to go for NSF funding rather than go for VCs or go for angel investment, and what did that allow you to do that you don't think you would have got from other investments? So it's a two-part question. I
Exactly.
apologize.
So I can answer the second part first, if that's okay. So I think we have a technology risk and a regulatory risk. So I think that makes NSF a perfect early investor, because most VC angel investors are looking for a proof that this is not just an idea, is something that works, and also either you have a regulatory a solid regulatory pathway, or you at least know how to do it. So I think without that, it's very hard to convince investors in early on. So that's, I think, addressing your second part of the question. And in terms of the skills, I think every day, so you learn, or you have to learn new skills as an entrepreneur. So as a scientist, your day is pretty routine, but as a scientist, but as an entrepreneur, you have to learn, how to hire people, how to, do patents, how to develop technologies, how to, communicate with FDA, how to, do accounting, how to hire, sometimes let go of people, fundraising. You have to learn how to, and more importantly, how to sell, not only your ideas, but also to your customers. I think it's a lot of learning. It doesn't end at all every single day. You have to learn about marketing, like Meta, Google, selling on Amazon. In our case, going to exhibition. So there's numerous learning opportunities. So I think the skill that help you is like don't uh, don't look at things as lower, like don't I think as long as you're open for learning new skills, it's gonna be an amazing journey. But I think it's a day to day, every day you're learning new skills.
Hey, thank you, Reza. Appreciate it. I think we are almost at time. We'll have Licia perhaps make some concluding comments. But before I hand it over to her, I want to thank both the panelists, and also want to let the audience know that you will receive the recording of today's presentation in a follow-up email. So if you have missed something, your line was not working properly, you will have access to the recording. Licia.
Thank you very much. I want to just say thank you to Brual and Reza. You did an outstanding job of sharing information about the secrets to success and sharing your journey, and we greatly appreciate that. So, it's when you're in a webinar form, it's difficult to hear a round of applause, but I took myself off of mute so that I can make sure you can hear actually hear that round of applause. Thank you so much for your for being with us today and sharing those comments. I also want to thank Alistair and Rajesh. You know, it's important that whenever you have a team, it's important to have a team to help you be successful. And so I'm grateful to have both of them as program directors. They've been an integral part of our program for a very long time. I also want to make sure I thank the people behind the scenes that helped to make today a success. Catherine and Jenny and Hamad and Will and Eric and all of the other members of the NSF team behind the scenes to make today a success. We greatly appreciate everything that you did to ensure that this was a successful event. I also want to thank all of you that joined in to hear the comments, to listen, to learn, and also to put in such valuable questions in our Q&A. I want to thank you for being with us. Just remember that we are America's Seed Fund powered by NSF. So we will have another event actually this week on Thursday as well to continue supporting and celebrating America's Seed Fund Week. Also, there's a QR code on this slide. Please make sure you scan that so that you'll have additional information on our program. We anticipate our solicitation coming out in the next few weeks and our project pitch portal opening up again in the next coming weeks. And so we look forward to receiving new ideas and being able to continue to support breakthroughs in our country. Everyone have a fabulous day, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully on Thursday.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much for having us.